The battlefield was silent. Not the kind of silence that followed peace, but the eerie, weighty quiet that comes after the storm of war, the kind that made the air taste metallic and the dust cling to every surface like a memory. Commander Elias Draven stood at the edge of the cratered plain, his armor scratched and scorched, his respirator fogging with every exhale. Around him, the remnants of the skirmish were strewn like shards of a broken dream, twisted metal, scorched earth, and alien bodies that no longer moved. He had been sent to this remote sector on one mission: secure the research facility the aliens called Shire Nexus and eliminate any threats. But now, standing among the silence and the shadows, he realized something more complicated had taken root. Something he couldn't have predicted. From the jagged remains of the facility emerged a figure, a lone alien, moving cautiously but with purpose. She was tall, elegant in a way that defied the brutality of her species' reputation. Her skin shimmered like molten silver under the dim light of the fractured moons above. Her eyes, large and reflective, scanned the ruins, lingering on him with a mixture of suspicion and recognition. Elias's hand instinctively moved toward his weapon, but he hesitated. There was something in the tilt of her head, a flicker in her eyes, that stopped him. "Don't," he whispered under the mask, as if even speaking louder would shatter the fragile moment. The alien stopped, cocking her head. Her voice, if it could be called that, was a series of melodic tones, almost musical, interspersed with guttural undertones. Yet Elias understood. Years of training in xenolinguistics had allowed him to learn enough of the Shire tongue to grasp basic communication. "You are alone," she said, her words clipped but clear. "I am," he replied, keeping his tone low, careful not to sound threatening. Her gaze flickered, moving over the scars and burns on his armor. She didn't step closer, but she didn't retreat either. Elias knew that look. It was the same one his own soldiers wore when encountering unknown threats, the mixture of fear and curiosity that comes when survival and memory collide. "I remember you," she said suddenly, her voice carrying an unexpected weight. Elias froze. You are not always like this," she continued, her tone trembling with something that resembled sorrow, or perhaps longing. He realized what she meant. He slowly raised his hand to the faceplate of his helmet. The metal was cold against his skin, yet he could feel the pulse beneath it, the hammering of his heart that betrayed his calm exterior. Slowly, deliberately, he unlatched the helmet. The visor hissed open, and the artificial filtering of his respirator ceased. He exhaled, holding his breath for a fraction longer than necessary, and then he pulled the mask away. The alien's eyes widened. She staggered back, though her movements were restrained, careful. Her hands, slender and metallic-tipped, fluttered near her chest. A whisper left her lips, a sound that was almost lost in the wind. "You," she murmured. "You are human." Elias nodded. "I always was." For a long moment, the battlefield held its breath along with them. The moons hung like watchful eyes, casting fractured silver shadows across the ruined facility. The silence between them was thick, but in it, something fragile, almost sacred, stirred. Her memory, long buried beneath years of conflict and survival, resurfaced like a tidal wave restrained only by the shore of her discipline. She remembered the human from another life, a time before war, before hatred, a time when he had saved her from hunters of her own kind, when he had risked everything to protect someone no one else would. She remembered the warmth of his hands, the calm in his eyes, the courage that was quiet yet unwavering. "You," she said again, the word carrying a lifetime of disbelief and emotion. You saved me." Elias's throat tightened. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the traces of the alien she had once been, the being who had trusted him, who had believed in the faint hope that two species could coexist without annihilation. "I remember," he said simply. The air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility, a fragile thread connecting past to present. Yet the war had left scars, physical and emotional, that neither could ignore. The alien studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly, the elegance of her form twisting into the wariness of a survivor. "Why are you here?" she asked finally, her voice steady, though the tremor in her tone betrayed her inner conflict. "I came to fight," he admitted. "But now, I don't know. I think maybe I came to find you." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, Elias noticed the faint glow beneath her skin, the subtle bioluminescence that seemed to pulse with her emotions. It was beautiful, fragile, a signal he instinctively understood. "You were never supposed to find me again," she said. "I wasn't supposed to," he replied, his voice low, rough with emotion. "But something told me I had to." She studied him, her gaze piercing through layers of fear, doubt, and history. You have changed," she said. "Your species, you have changed." "Not enough," he said bitterly. "We still fight, still destroy. But some of us remember." Her hands twitched, as if she wanted to reach out but feared what might happen. She had lived through decades of hatred toward his kind, trained to see humans as nothing more than predators. And yet, here he stood, not just a human soldier, but a man who had once chosen compassion over conquest. "You are not like them," she whispered, the words almost a prayer. "I never was," he replied. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of ash and ozone. Elias took a cautious step closer, careful not to startle her. She didn't move back. She didn't step forward either. But there was a tension in her shoulders, a quiver in her form, that spoke louder than words. "You risked everything," she said, almost to herself. "For me. For a life I didn't even know you valued." "I did," he said simply. "I always did." The memory that had lain dormant in her mind surged forward like an unstoppable tide. She remembered his face under a different sky, a different war. She remembered the fire, the chaos, and his steady presence amidst it all. And she remembered the promise, unspoken yet undeniable, that no matter the cost, he would stand by her. Tears, something akin to tears for her species, welled in her eyes. Metallic droplets, glinting under the fractured moons, betrayed her stoic exterior. "You remember everything," he said softly, recognizing the signs of emotional awakening. I do," she whispered. "I remember who you were, who you are." The tension between them began to dissolve, replaced by a fragile sense of recognition and trust. Elias could feel it, the pulse of something greater than either species, a bridge built from memory and courage, forged in moments that had transcended war. "I never wanted this war," she said finally, her voice steadier. "I never wanted to forget you. But they made me forget. They made me believe you were like them, like the rest of your kind." "I know," he said. "I've felt that too, the lies, the manipulation. But here we are." Her gaze softened, and the shimmer along her skin deepened, pulsing in rhythm with his own heartbeat. "Here we are," she echoed. Elias lowered his weapon fully, the gesture deliberate and symbolic. She watched, her head tilting slightly, unsure but curious. He stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking with every heartbeat. "You trust me," he said quietly. I think I do," she replied, her voice tinged with vulnerability. For the first time in decades, the battlefield seemed less like a place of death and more like a stage for something entirely new. The memories of past battles, past betrayals, and past fears began to fade, replaced by the fragile threads of a shared history they could rebuild together. "You were always my human," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Even when I didn't know it." "And you were always my alien," he replied. "Even when I thought I had lost you." The moons above them shimmered as if acknowledging the moment, casting silver light across the ruined landscape. Elias reached out his hand, hesitating only for a fraction of a second before she mirrored the gesture. Their hands met, human flesh against alien skin, and for a fleeting moment, time itself seemed to pause. "You have remembered me," he said. "I have," she whispered. "And now, perhaps, we can remember each other again." For the first time in years, they stood not as soldier and survivor, human and alien, enemy and prey, but as two beings bound by memory, courage, and the unshakable understanding that some connections transcend species, war, and time. The wind carried the scent of renewal. The dust and smoke of the battlefield began to settle, revealing the glimmers of a future neither could have foreseen. And in that moment, the moment Elias Draven unmasked himself and the alien woman remembered, the possibility of reconciliation, of understanding, and of hope began to take root in a universe that had long forgotten such luxuries. They stood together, hand in hand, gazing across the shattered landscape. Neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. The memory of trust, the weight of shared history, and the fragile pulse of a new beginning spoke louder than any declaration could. For in the moment of recognition, the universe itself seemed to pause, acknowledging that even amidst war and destruction, the threads of compassion and courage could endure. And in that enduring moment, Elias and the alien woman remembered not only each other, but the promise of something greater, something worth fighting for beyond the battles, beyond the hatred, and beyond the stars. And for the first time, they dared to believe that memory alone could be the beginning of a future. The wind softened as the moons cast their silver glow across the battlefield. For a long moment, neither Elias nor the alien woman spoke. Around them, the ruins of Shire Nexus were still smoldering, the echoes of destruction fading like a distant memory. Yet in that silence, something new was born. She looked at him, truly looked, and saw not the soldier who had fought countless wars, but the man who had risked everything for her life. And he saw in her eyes not the alien warrior, but the being he had saved, who had once trusted him completely. You really came back," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I always knew I would," he replied. "I had to see you again. I had to remember and be remembered." The tension that had clung to the ruins began to dissolve. Slowly, deliberately, she stepped closer, her hand reaching for his. He met her halfway, their fingers brushing in a moment that was both tentative and electric. For a heartbeat, the war that had divided their worlds seemed meaningless. "Do you forgive me?" she asked, her voice trembling with the weight of decades of fear and doubt. Elias shook his head gently. "There's nothing to forgive. What matters is now what we choose to do next." Her gaze softened, and for the first time, she smiled. It was a small, fragile thing, but it lit up the shadows of the battlefield. "Then let us choose carefully," she said. He nodded, feeling the pulse of something far stronger than survival, far stronger than duty. Hope, trust, connection. Things he thought had been lost forever in the chaos of war. As they stood together, hand in hand, the moons reflected off the surface of the cratered ground, revealing signs of life returning, tiny shoots of alien flora breaking through the ash, a subtle promise that even here, amidst the wreckage of countless battles, renewal was possible. "You remember me," he said softly, almost to himself. I do, she replied. And now, perhaps, the universe will remember too. For the first time in decades, they did not need words to define their bond. It was enough to stand side by side, two beings from worlds that had long been at war, now united by memory, courage, and the fragile hope that something better could grow from the ruins. The moons above shimmered as if acknowledging their choice, casting a gentle light over the ruined landscape. Elias lowered his gaze to meet hers, feeling the weight of the moment and the promise it carried.
Together, he said.
Together, she echoed. And as they turned from the battlefield, leaving behind the echoes of war, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, watching as two souls, human and alien, stepped into a future neither could have imagined but both could now build. In that final moment, the past did not disappear. It lingered, not as pain, but as a foundation for what could be. A bridge between worlds, forged in memory, courage, and the undeniable truth that even after devastation, life and hope could endure. The suns rose over the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of amber and violet. And as light touched the remnants of Shire Nexus, Elias and the alien woman walked forward, side by side, unmasked, remembered, and ready to face whatever the stars held for them next.